Director for Lexington County School District 1. We're here today to talk about the evaluation or the RFP for the bond referendum that we wanted to go through. The last time that we met, we went ahead and went through the scope of work. I added a little bit to the scope of work over the last couple of days. Did everyone have a chance to review it?
Yes.
Okay. Were there any questions about anything that we added?
I didn't have any questions, but I made a couple of suggestions to the live document.
Okay.
There were some other places in the document where it still said the word audit, and I changed those to agreed upon procedures.
Okay.
But I wanted to vet that past you all and say, did I put those in those appropriate areas or not? So.
Perfect. I'm going to get my computer going. One of the things that I had when I was looking at the document, because we changed it to agreed upon procedures, which means that we have to have agreed upon procedures with whomever we contract with to do this work. And so agreed upon procedures means that we need to have those in the document so the whomever is submitting proposals to us, they understand what they're looking at doing, because that helps them come up with a cost. So we know there's a good basis for a contract there, that they know what they're doing. So one of the things that the code allows for is to have conversation with industry before the solicitation goes out. So I wanted to just talk a little bit today about, before we finalize all this, if that would be something that you all would like to maybe do. What that means is we could go to, you can't just go to one firm, but you can go to several firms, and you can let them look at what you have as your scope of work, and you can say, based on what we have here, do you think that we would be able to get proposals that would be advantageous, or do you think that we need to work on it more? We cannot ask them to help us draft it, because that is, that would be a conflict of interest, unless they don't plan to give us a proposal, right? But then I think if you go into that scenario, that would be something totally different, like you would be consulting with them to help you draft. So I wanted to see, how do you guys feel about that? Now that will push the process out a little bit longer. So that's the other thing. So I wouldn't be able to post it in a couple of weeks like we had talked about. It'll be a little bit longer because we have to find those firms that we want to talk to and have those conversations with.
And just to follow up on that for some clarification, with my experience being a partner in an audit firm, it does need to be very detailed, very specific. We want you to pull X number. I think we're covered here because it's a whole project or 4 whole projects, but it does need to be very detailed. I know, for example, in our 2.1, conduct a detailed analysis. Well, what is an analysis that you want? What you have to be able to tell them exactly what you want them to look for. Are you looking that it agrees to the invoice? Are you looking at it that it is reasonable? What is the definition of reasonable? I just don't want you to get too far down the road and then have this come back and, anyone that's wanted to bid on it have a lot of questions of saying, well, we don't have enough information. I just wanted to make sure I expressed that to you. You certainly could look at it and feel it's detailed enough and that's what you want to start with and just go with it. Doesn't mean you have to change it. I just wanted to make sure I shared that information.
So, Ms. Miller, you're saying that we would potential bidders, we would talk to all of them in advance about what our agreed upon procedures are to get a feel from them whether, is that the document we have here? This document, does this give you what you need, or are there a lot of other questions that we'll have?
That's exactly what Mrs. Franklin, I'm sorry, she got married. I try to remember her married name. That is exactly what she's indicating that would be allowable. They just cannot give you the exact steps and procedures, because then they would not be able to bid on it. So you could potentially, you have the option to do that, or you could have an option to consult with a firm that could help you write the procedures as well, if you had concern about that, if you didn't feel comfortable coming up with the procedures as a committee.
For instance, if anyone, I don't know if anyone has ever seen, maybe you have, Mr. Pizzuti, there's a agreed upon procedures for procurement audits that the state says that when an auditor comes and they audit procurement of school districts, it's exactly what they have to audit and how they audit it. So it would be the same thing. This is it if anyone would like to see it. So it would be the same. It's not like a financial audit. What they do for the school is, or what they do for the finance is completely different because it's GAAP, it's things like that, whereas this would be a little bit different. I looked it up yesterday, there are 3 different types of audits. Procedural audits, was that one? Performance audits, and then you have your financial audits. So those are separate types of audits.
I think if you're looking at the agreed upon procedures in the procurement audit, specifically, if you go to page, and this is what they test every year in the procurement audit. If you go to page 6, section F, that's compliance for construction, architect, and engineer. And then that references the attributes that they are testing, which is Exhibit B, which is actually page 9. And that's a list of the specific things that you have to, those are the agreed upon procedures that they're testing. So I'm just showing this as an example of making sure we feel comfortable that we have enough detail in our procedures for someone to be able to bid on it.
So, in my line of work, when we do RFPs on big projects, especially like a design build type project, we do put them out for industry review, the RFPs, to get their feedback. So I'm not saying I'm against the idea of it, but I don't want to see us where we keep doing this stuff and it keeps pushing this back. Because I don't think this is something that we want to, push back too far. And so I'd be fine with the industry review as long as, the deliverables are still on the same timetable as we originally spoke the last time. So it may give them less time to work on it, depending on how long this industry review would take.
Deliverables as far as it being done in a year. Okay. And that could also be another thing that they look at to make sure it may not take a whole year for that to happen. It may take 6 months, but we can get a clearer understanding of that. Anybody else have any other comments or?
Yeah, that was my biggest hold up, was the timeline. So I'm with Nick as long as it still fits within our timeline. Hoping that doesn't take a year, but.
Yeah. And I think that within your timeline, as long as in the RFP we put a timeline, time just means money, right? So if we say it has to be done by then that just means they put more people on it. If we gave them 2 years to do it, then it would be less money. So the shorter time period, the more it costs, and the longer time period. But we can definitely get an idea of that by going to industry and asking the questions.
Okay.
So, Ms. Franklin, as I'm looking through Exhibit B, it appears that there's a pretty good framework to guide, a vendor as to, I want you to look at this, look at that. And some of it mirrors what we discussed at our last committee meeting about, hey, we like you to, I'm just looking at like sole source contracts or change orders. I guess, is this Exhibit B something typically that goes out with RFPs from all the school districts whenever we're talking about an audit? Is this kind of a generic framework, or does?
This comes from the state. Yeah, State Fiscal Accountability Authority, and any auditor that does an audit for a school district procurement department has to follow this. They don't have a choice. There's no other guideline. But we can definitely take things from this and create our agreed upon procedures, and then that would be helpful to the auditors. The only thing that, it doesn't deal with any of the finance things that you may have.
Okay.
And I think it's just for reference to show you, this is exactly what's tested every year by our external independent audit firm. And so these are things that are already being tested. So there may be things that you want looked at in addition to these, since these are already tested. Or maybe you want them repeated, or as it's on a sample basis, you want a full project tested.
So I do have a question about that testing, because obviously I'm not an auditor. I don't have the expertise you all have, but what I'm wondering is if it's tested each year by, like for us now, it's Malden and Jenkins. They pull a sample of what we have, because obviously we have a lot of purchase orders, different things like that, contracts. So I wonder, are we just directing them to say, hey, you're used, I'm not saying Malden and Jenkins, I'm saying whoever we select, you're used to looking at these certain things, but I want you to specifically look at these particular projects and I guess take your lens and focus it a little bit clearer, but right here rather than just pulling a sample from anywhere. I think that's basically what I'm hearing.
That would be correct, because you're specifically saying these are the ones that we want to look at. Whereas, like you said, when they come in and they do the procurement audit, it's a random sampling. So it could be one, any of the projects.
Okay. And just a follow-up question. So if you have, I'm just trying to think, if there's a specific project and there's a specific concern about a specific project, when would you get to a point you might share that with the person that is doing your testing? Like, hey, on this specific project, I need you to look at this. I mean, I imagine you wouldn't put that in the RFP, but once you select them, you would.
I think it would be in the RFP because that's the agreed upon procedure that you want them to look at, and their amount to do that versus another to be competitive needs to be defined in the agreed upon procedure. So I think if there's a specific area, that's where you need to build that agreement of what you want them to look at.
I don't know if you mean like this transaction on this day or do you, we probably want to create the procedures to capture whatever it is that you're looking for.
Right.
Yeah, or if it just, whatever it is,
I do.
Okay.
I get that. I mean, without going into specifics,
Yeah.
I'm thinking if I know that there was a particular, I won't say I know, I just want to prove. If there's a suggestion that when we were building our transportation facility, I'd be careful with my words here. If we're building a transportation facility and there's a question as to whether this person who did this part of the project qualified properly for the sole source or the single source or whatever. I was just wondering, when do you say to the vendor, I want you to look at company ABC and look at that contract and make sure everything was appropriate when they did that? I mean, I don't know if you go in that level of detail in the RFP.
Like, for instance, if you're talking about sole sources that we do in the district, that we would be responsible for signing, all of those are tested every year.
Okay.
Every single year, every sole source is tested, and every emergency. They look at every single one of them. So that would be, if we use these, they would look at any sole sources that were in those projects that you have.
Okay.
Specifically the projects that you've listed.
Okay.
Or emergencies.
Gotcha.
And I think you see that on page 5 of 11 at the very top, section C, obtain copies of 100% written sole source. So those are tested each year.
Okay.
Yesterday I took our scope of work, and I'm very lucky that IT has given me a version of our Google AI Gemini that I can use, and it allowed me to take our scope of work and sort of create what it said would be a good agreed upon procedures based on what our scope of work is. So I can share that with you all, and you can sort of look through it. I'm not saying that it's good because I am an expert in procurement. I know a little bit about all this other stuff because I have to, because I procure them, but I'm an expert in procurement. So I can share those things, and that can be the basis for what we go to industry with and say, hey, look at this. Does this make sense? And then along with what our scope of work is for the RFP. So between Jennifer and I, we've done a little bit more of the work during, working hours to get that done. So I could share that, and we'll look at that, and then we can sort of decide who in the industry, or we can put it out. I can put it out on Skibo, and I can say, hey, we're looking for, if that's how you all would like to do it, Skibo is a great way to advertise and get everyone across the state to come to us and say, hey, we would be interested in your opinion on this.
So this would just be put out like an RFI on Skibo?
Basically, yeah. Now, that's how I envision it, just an RFI, hey, can we talk to you for a few minutes about this?
And that stands for request for information?
Request for information.
Sorry, make sure. Okay, got it.
Sorry.
And how long is that process? You said 2 weeks?
It can be as short or as long as we want, but it will take, it has to be within their schedules and stuff like that. So if we put a very short period of time on it, then we're probably not going to get a lot of response, but if we put a longer period, it'll probably be better. I can also probably try somehow to reach out to some auditors maybe in Georgia and North Carolina, since they're our neighboring states, and see if there's a way that I can get that out too.
Okay.
And we're just giving you suggestions.
Yes.
You guys certainly can make the decision of no, we feel comfortable with what we already have, proceed with that. We're not pushing one way or the other, just sharing information.
No, I appreciate the feedback, and I said it in our first committee meeting, I lean heavily on Mr. Pizzuti a little, because I don't want to engineer this thing like the engineer mind so that it's, so detailed and everything like that. It's not really appropriate for people in that industry that deal with RFPs. So, I appreciate y'all giving us that input, but I'm thinking agreed upon procedures, we probably need to have something to give them a better picture of what we want them to look at, but I don't know exactly what they should do.
No, and I'm in agreement, and I think it's never bad getting industry review, especially when we're going after them, because that's how, in my opinion, when you're writing an RFP for procurement, you want to make sure you put everything you want in that, because if you don't, it gets you in trouble where we didn't put that in there, so they're not bidding it, and therefore we didn't get it. So, we want to make sure our scope is dialed in as best as possible to make sure we get the best deliverable that we want. So, yeah, I think I do think the RFI, and through Skibo, everybody can see it, because just about everybody in that type of industry, they're going to be looking at that for state work. And so I just like I said, I'll just reiterate, I don't want a long drawn out. I think at the most we put on Skibo, 3 weeks to 4 weeks for something back, in my opinion. I think if we push it too long, then, we could get a lot more stuff than we don't want to hear either. Because the longer you put out there, they're going to nitpick it as much as possible, in my opinion. So, I think you don't want to do 2 weeks because you're not going to get any responses. But I think that 3 to 4 to 5 week area is probably going to be a good area.
So do you think that what we have now is sufficient to go out for the RFI, or do we need to tweak a little bit more prior to going out for the RFI? This is just my opinion. I think what we have is pretty kind of spells out like a good, I guess, a high-level scope of what we want, and, they can respond back on each line item. Hey, here's a question that we may have about this. What are you actually looking for? Okay. I think there's stuff like that. I don't think there's any need to do more work on
the scope itself, I mean, we kind of put in here what we want. And, you know, I'd kind of like to hear back what their opinions are if it's not enough information. Because, I mean, that's what we're going to get back, if it's enough or if it's not enough, and then what they think. So, but, I mean, if you want to send us what you got and, you know, to review as well, I don't think that would hurt.
Okay. I can do that. I will put it together today and share that with you all.
So
And-
go ahead, Ms. Franklin.
How would you all like to get the industry review? Do you want them in written, like them to come back? So RFI is typically, it's not a formal. We cannot award off of an RFI. We can't do any of that. It's just for information. So if I can put it out there and say, hey, we would like for you to look at this and then give us feedback, written feedback. And normally that's how it works. Sometimes you can schedule a meeting with industry and you can say, hey, you know, can we do a Zoom meeting and, you know, get your ideas on what we have. How would you all like to see it? Written feedback?
I'm good with written feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the quick and easiest with everyone's schedule.
Yeah, that will
Okay.
be the quickest. I mean, a Zoom would be awesome, but
I'm good with that.
Okay, written feedback, okay.
So the question I had, Ms. Franklin, is one thing you all brought up was, should we or should we not add special standards of responsibility as a requirement?
Yes.
Tried to do some Google searching last night to understand, but I didn't quite understand. So if you could help me
Absolutely.
understand what decision we need to make around that.
Absolutely. So special standards of responsibility is a state of South Carolina. I've never seen it anywhere else, but when I worked for the state of South Carolina at State Fiscal Accountability Authority, basically what special standards of responsibility goes to your ability to, your capacity to perform, right? So financial, license, things like that. So if you want them to be a licensed auditor, that might be something. If you want them to be, like we talked about, if it's a standard of responsibility that they need to have performed an audit in South Carolina, anything that you put there, if they don't have it, they will be they'll be non-responsible because it goes to responsibility. There are two things in procurement. We have responsiveness, which means they conform to everything we asked them in the solicitation. They gave me all the forms, they signed on the dotted line, they did all the things. And then responsibility means they have the capacity to perform the project. Now, the notes that I put in there said, if we say that they have to be a licensed auditing firm in standards of responsibility, that does not transfer into the scope. So they can be a licensed auditing firm when I do responsibility check, but then throughout the contract life, they don't have to be because that goes to responsibility. So we would want to put that, if that's a standard, in the scope of work. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
But now that you've clarified, and this kind of being a special procurement audit, I don't know what my counterparts may say, but I don't necessarily think you have to have the standards of
do
responsibility
not.
for what we're asking them to do.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. I will.
But I don't know.
I can take that out. It's just something that's
Okay.
on in a solicitation document that I wanted to ask.
Okay.
And I think there was one other question.
The other question you had was about a interview process.
Yes.
And it was like a phase 1 and phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
My personal opinion is I think an interview process for the person you're going to be working with is going to deliver that product to you would be important. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think just hey, we're getting ready to embark on this, you've been awarded this, these are our thoughts. I mean, I think we've put our thoughts into the RFP,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if that's customary in the industry, but I like that idea.
Sure. So phase 1 would be your evaluation, when all the evaluation team gets together and they score, and then we would get the highest ranked. So say you have 2. And I think the way that it's written in that one is whoever has the possibility with the scores in, if they go on to interview, to be able to, I think, still rise above any others, right? So the interview would be before award. So it would be part of the scoring process, basically. And then that gives you a chance to meet the highest ranked. It gives you a chance to make sure that people, when they respond to RFPs, they can put anything that they want into an RFP. But you want to make sure that when you meet them, you can work with them and they're giving you exactly what you're looking for. And so that was the question. You do not have to. We can make it optional, because what you don't want to happen is if I say there will be an interview, then we have to do it. But I can say if we have two, they're highest ranked and they rise above, there has to be a break in there where they can rise above, then we can do an interview. Then we want to leave ourselves open to that.
Let's do that.
Okay.
I like the optional.
Okay.
I'm used to that because all of ours is, we may have
Yes.
this. And that way it doesn't lock you in if you,
Yes.
so. But
Yeah.
Let's not lock
It's-
ourselves.
I've
Yeah.
been where I've had one person that's and then we still had to do interviews, and I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Then that sounds good. I will put that together.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
I created clear in the evaluation sections. We had the evaluation with the scores, or what the evaluation points were. I created some clearer information underneath them to let people know how it's going to be evaluated. You all were okay with those parts?
I'm pretty sure I was. I'm
Okay.
relook real quick.
Yes, and it did add up to 100.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
Math is not my thing. Okay.
I was good with that.
Will we have a chance to talk about price?
So price can be done two different ways, and we do need to clear that up in the RFP. So you can do most of the time price is done, you make everyone do apples to apples, where it can be done by a formula. So no one is skewed by the price, because you don't want that. Or you can do a subjective pricing model, which means the evaluation panel would see the price, but you only see price after you've done evaluation of the proposals. And it would be after interviews, so you're only going to see the highest ranked. You're not going to see all of them. And the reason being is if price is really, really, really a factor, then we should be doing a different type of solicitation process.
So during the RFI, though, will
We can ask for what would be a range of something like this would cost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I was thinking.
we could ask for a range, or how many hours do you think it would cost? Because everyone has different hourly rates. That was another thing that I would like to put in the RFP is an hourly rate as well as a total project price, because if it happens that we need something else done, we have that hourly rate, and it's already in the RFP, and we don't have to do another solicitation or figure out another way to do it, so it will be there. And
Smart.
also, I would like we said 1 year, but I would also like an additional optional year. It's the same way that we did, I think, one of the studies, just in case we need them to do something else after. Still related to this, but you might have like another board meeting that you want them to present to, or you might, something like that. So it just gives us the option. We don't have to do that extra year, but it gives us the option, if that's okay with everyone else. I've ran into where we do it 1 year and then we're like, oh, darn, we need them to do something else, and then we don't have that option.
Just as long as it's spelled out that we need it.
Yes, ma'am.
So under the evaluation criteria, we have fee proposal. So, and we were going to grade that, 25%. So is that them basically telling us, hey, here's our in-house rates, our hourly rates, our travel rates, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. And
Okay.
part of that is I'm going to ask them to give us milestones based on how they want to be paid as well. Because they're not going to wait till the end of this to get paid. They're going to want to get paid in probably milestone payments, I'm assuming. So as they do this, they want you to give them a fourth of the payment, or however that works. So I'm going to ask them to clearly spell that out, because that gives us a way to look back and say, okay, you've done what you're supposed to, now we can pay you.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, when they do their price proposal based on our RFP, we'll already know what their rates are, how they charge, but then you're gonna ask them some kind of an overall estimate. I guess this probably won't be necessarily like a time and materials, but will they bid like a not to exceed this amount? Or
Yeah,
is
I'm
that
gonna-
typically what happens?
Yeah, what I would like to ask them is, this is our project, this is what we want you to do, how much are you gonna charge us? Like, what is gonna be the overall cost, like,
Okay.
total cost? But then also, in that total cost, break it down to what you're saying your milestones are. Like,
Okay.
you know, if they're say they're $5,000, just to use an amount, then they want 1,500 after they provide you with the first quarterly report. Then the second quarter, you know, that way. But it's gonna be, this is the cost for them to do what we're asking them to do. And then the hourly rate will only be if there is something that they need to do that is not, maybe in the second year, for some reason, or if it's something, I don't want to say outside the scope because we can't use it for outside the scope of the solicitation, but something that is within the scope but we didn't count on, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, unforeseen. I hate unforeseen because that means you dug up the ground and there's a pipe leaking, but can't see that.
No, I like your 5 bullet points you included underneath the price proposal.
Okay.
I think that encompasses everything we're discussing. So, the only other thing I was going to ask a question about, I think everything looks good, is where I ended up making some changes. Let's see, let me find it. Underneath Section 3, proposal requirements, I noticed that the document we had, the first bullet point, we struck through audit. We had audit firm, we struck through audit. But then as you go down to bullet point 2, 3, 4, 5, I continue to see audit. My suggestion was you change that to agreed upon procedures, but I didn't know if that's accurate or not. So if that is accurate, that's the one thing we probably need to change, but if not, leave it as audit as you had it in the printed copy.
I think taking it to agreed upon procedures is the best route to go with that. And then as far as firm, taking the word audit out opens that up to other firms that may do the similar type of work.
Okay. Yeah, those are all the concerns I basically had at this point. But I do defer to Mr. Pizzuti. Mr. Pizzuti, are we missing anything?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
I think, we'll get the updated stuff from Ms. Franklin and look over it and have one more of these meetings to say, let's get the RFI out and go with it.
Okay. I did want to ask, probably Dr. Price, is it appropriate on this document, I linked it's public information, but for the board the board report that Jennifer does, the first link where it says $365 million bond referendum, that is what is provided to the public for those projects every month. And then the second one that says construction of new schools, renovations to existing facilities, that is what Ms. Holliday was able to get from the election commission for Lexington County. And I just, I took off the email information and put that there. And so when I publish that, is that appropriate to have in this document?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Those are all public documents, so to reference them or to link them here,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And while I have the mic, we have a place on our next board meeting agenda for informational items, and there's an opportunity for this committee to give an update on where we are in the process. So we've got that penciled in. Just need to know who would like to be the volunteer to give that update. And so we'll attach a name to the agenda. So you don't have to answer that now, but just think about that. and let me
Obviously,
know.
they're both looking at me, so I guess I'll take it.
Nomination accepted.
Yeah.
All right.
Those were the voluntold type of eyes they gave me.
I was just looking at you. That's all. I was just looking. not from my standpoint.
So just for action follow-up, you're going to give us that information, and then, once we get that, we can go from there. So, assuming we'll have to have another quick meeting.
So as far as us having our next meeting, I guess once we get that done, we can coordinate, and then we public notice it and say, hey, we're going to do it on this day. Okay. I'm good. It's not a formal meeting, so we can kind of like say,
Yeah.
we're
No
done.
motion needed.
No motion needed,
No
just,
motion to leave.
Thank you all.
I
appreciate
will
it.
say appreciate all the work y'all
Yes.
done helping us out on this.
Absolutely.
yes, thank you for guiding us on this process. It's been very helpful. So,
Procurement is fun.
all right.
Sometimes.
Good,